Hola, I'm Elias Torres, co-founder and CTO of Drift. You're listening to the American Dream podcast. On this show, we talk to leaders who have achieved their own version of the American dream. But we also focus on the work that needs to be done to create a more consistent and diverse face of corporate America. That's why I'm setting aside time to talk to leaders of nonprofit organizations, the people leading the charge to build a brighter future for the next generation. Bienvenidos a todos to the American Dream podcast. Today, I'm excited to have Kevin Marinacci. He is the president of Fabretto's Children Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization focused on educating and empowering underserved children, youth, and their families to improve their livelihoods and their communities. The Fabretto organization operates under the belief that education can be the gateway out of poverty. And for over 65 years, they've worked with not only students, but also their parents and teachers to improve the quality of education and ensure students reach their full potential. Today, Kevin is going to tell us more about the work Fabretto is focused on, operating now as a global organization. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Elias. It's a real delight to be with you today and your audience and celebrating this, wonderful American dream. And I know you've worked so hard to achieve yours, and you're so generous to help others here in the U.S. and abroad to achieve theirs. So thank you.
Maybe we share a little bit of quick story, right, of our mutual friend. I have a friend that is a startup tech guy here in the United States. And one time we were meeting and he asked me where I was from and I said, I'm from Nicaragua. And he goes, oh, do I have a story to tell you, right? And next thing I know, Kevin, you were here in Boston and we had dinner together. And I got to hear the story directly from you. And I've been so in awe, right, because of your work and your dedication. But let's tell, the audience, right, a little bit of that story. What happened? Tell me. Let's go back to Kevin graduating out of school. Was it Georgetown you went to school?
Yep. I graduated in Georgetown in 1989, and myself and 10 other volunteers were sent to Nicaragua to volunteer for a year. We were assigned to different programs, different nonprofits. I wanted to work with kids, and so our hosts in Nicaragua said, well, the guy that takes care of the kids here is Padre Fabretto. And that's who I was assigned to and had the pleasure of working with him for about a year. Padre Fabretto was a real legendary person. He was an Italian missionary, a Salesian missionary. He came to Nicaragua in the late 40s and worked in some of the Salesian schools. Salesians, as you know, do great work with youth and training and trades. But Padre Fabretto wanted to work with kids that weren't in school, those that were on the street, those that had been abandoned. And so he started his own organization in 1953 called Familia Padre Fabretto, Father Fabretto's Family. In 1989, as you might recall, Nicaragua was still at the Civil War. It was a very challenging time in Central America. And when I got there, it was Padre Fabretto ran homes that were with kids that had been orphaned, some escaping the war, abandoned kids, poor kids. It was quite a mixed bag. It was a very challenging time. The good news was that the war ended in 1990. And unfortunately, the bad news was our founder, Padre Fabretto, passed away in March of that year. So it was kind of a real crossroads for that organization. We were afraid that his good works might die with him. So a bunch of us, some volunteers, some benefactors, some alumni, we all got together to keep his good works going. And gracias a Dios and many friends, it continues today. So we're coming up on 70 years next year. We're very proud of that.
He passed away while you were there as a 22, 21-year-old?
Yeah, it was 21. I had been down there for about 8 or 9 months. Our commitment was for a year. So he passed away March 22nd of 1990, and I was heading home in May to Chicago, where I grew up. But it was really a seminal moment where here was this guy who really sacrificed his whole life to serve others, and built a beautiful organization. Father Fabretto was a charismatic leader. Upon reflection, many Nicaraguans think of him as, one of the incredible people of the last century. In fact, the Nicaraguan Historical Society had a reflection, 1999, 2000, who were the 100 most important personas of the last century, and he was one of them. So La Prensa, the paper of record down there, when they celebrated their 90th anniversary of publishing, who were the 90 notables. So here was this larger than life figure, an incredible leader through service, through serving children and youth and campesino families. But he wasn't really an organization guy. So he built this incredible thing, but it was in danger of dying with him. And so again, a bunch of us said, well, we can't let this happen. It's important not only for the next generation of children, but also to preserve this memory of an incredible person who really sacrificed and worked hard so that others can reach their dreams.
What an amazing moment, right? And it is it's just so moving and touching. I keep thinking about you, as a 21-year-old, appreciating what this man had done, right? And willing to make a sacrifice yourself, to a choice, a decision that had no time limit at that moment that you could foresee, and choose to not come back to the United States, right? And not do what every other one was doing, right? Oh, I got to get a job. I got to go get me my apartment. You were in Washington, Chicago, condo, whatever, right? And play golf. And you made a decision. I'm staying in this country that I wasn't born. I don't speak the language. I mean, people don't even know what job to pick. And you made this incredible life decision. How'd you do that?
Well, at first I called my folks back in Evanston, so it's a city right north of Chicago where I grew up, and I called my folks and said, I think I need to stay for another year. So at least in my mind, the transition was, one day at a time, 1 year at a time. And, my folks had sacrificed a great deal. I mean, much like yourself, they were first generation to go to college. My father was the son of an Italian immigrant who worked in the coal mines for 40 years outside of Pittsburgh. He was fortunate to get a scholarship to go to Hopkins undergrad and then University of Chicago for his grad school, and worked, 40 years for Amoco Oil. And, so my mom and dad lived the American dream. They worked very hard so that we could all go to school. And my dad tells a story. He said, okay, you can stay for another year, but he came down to check it out and understand what was going on. I mean, here they had just spent all this money sending their kid to Georgetown, and you want to do what? And so he came to check it out, and he tells a story that he came to convince me to come home. But the beautiful thing is he caught the bug. And I think that is because the American dream, as you know and have lived, doesn't stop at our borders, our beautiful country's borders. It's really about people affording others the opportunity to reach their potential. And I think he and my mom saw that, and so squarely got behind it. And my dad, who is was a very organized businessman, and my undergrad at Georgetown was wonderful. It was liberal arts. I studied American studies. So, I did great undergrad stuff, read tons of books, chase Frisbees, enjoy, meeting people all over. So I didn't have a business background, but my father said, okay, if we're going to get, stuck in, and if we're going to help, let's get organized. And so after that first year, we began the U.S. 501c3, the nonprofit foundation here, to raise awareness and money. We began to tap into different networks, alumni networks of high schools and churches and colleges, and start knocking on the door of foundations. And the wonderful thing about that, Elias, was, the United States is an incredible country, and people are so very generous. Certainly we have challenges and issues that we're trying to address. But when you think about, since the founding of our country, that people come together to raise barns or raise money or support organizations, that's always been part of the American spirit of philanthropy. And so we took some of that energy and know-how and set up the U.S. Foundation in order to support Father Fabretto's work in Nicaragua. So that was a seminal moment, and worked very hard with alum and other colleagues, and began to build the organization out. Obviously, nonprofits are distinct enterprises than a for-profit companies like the ones that you have run, but a lot of the same principles apply. And so investing in people and systems, and so we began getting traction and support, and that was very positive, and good things began to happen. We were able to improve the campuses where the students were studying. We were able to offer more programs, and this was at a time, as you remember, Nicaragua was really flat on its back, and in the beginning years, we didn't even know what the kids were going to eat the next day. So it was a challenging time, but again, we are very grateful for everybody who made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I left Nicaragua in 1993, so that's the time where you were just getting started.
Yeah, we probably crossed each other on the streets.
Yeah, on the streets of Managua. Just to give people an idea of the magnitude, which is I've always been blown away, right? Because I feel like you have, I don't have to. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, right? I think what you did is tell us a little bit of the magnitude. Like, what was it when you took it over? Right, you were 21 years old. How many children? How many centers or offices or staff, and what is it now, right? Or what was at its peak?
Yeah,
we'll talk about
that. It was at that moment a very challenging time in Nicaragua. Padre Fabretto had about 500 children and youth, and it was a residential program, so it was more like a boys' town or a girls' town model where children had been either abandoned, orphaned. So it's a little different model. Obviously, the Civil War took such a heavy toll on everybody. So it was a small operation. I think in the earlier years, in the 60s and the 70s, was kind of Padre Fabretto's golden years of getting support and more programming. But when I was there, it was a very modest. And again, we really didn't know any given day necessarily what the students were going to eat. And the education component of it was very, very thin, because again, we were just trying to keep kids out of harm's way. The war took such a great toll. So after that, we began building out the organization, and in the last 10 years, we grew to become a very leading education foundation in Nicaragua, serving over 50,000 students. Budgets ranging from $4 to $5 million, working with leading companies like Cargill, Telefonica, who did corporate social responsibility work with us, working with USAID, Inter-American Development Bank. So we're able to bring, keep that same passion of service, but bring in the kind of structure that you need in order to attract social investment and improve outcomes for these students. So I am very proud of what we were able to build. Obviously, what happened to us in the beginning of this year and so many other nonprofits in Nicaragua is tragic. But I'm very proud that we're taking those lessons and being able to put those into play in other countries in the region as well.
Tell us a little bit about. I think that a question we all ask ourselves, me as a parent, right? For example, is like, how do we, make children aware of the opportunities, right? How can we have an impact on children? And, maybe it's the same children everywhere, but tell us a little bit of what you did for the children in Nicaragua, right? Like, how did you approach it? What was your goal? And what were you able to do for them?
Yeah, I think, the job number one after the war ended was to get kids back in school. There was such a big gap in learning because of the war years. A lot of kids just didn't go to school. So job number one was getting kids back into the school system. And then as
And that it was that the public school or your schools?
Well, interestingly, Elias, so we had these campuses, or we had these homes. There were homes for children, and then after the war ended, we worked very hard to reunite those who did have family. And again, one of the beautiful things of Latin culture, and you saw it here, you still see it, of course, in the United States, and you saw it throughout generations, where extended family helps take care of their own. And so if they didn't have a parent, but they might have had an uncle, an aunt, grandparents, we tried to reunite families and say, look, we don't want to substitute the family. We don't want to do a residential program. It was needed at the time of the war to keep kids out of harm's way. Let's reunite families next of kin, and then use those assets that we have to start doing community-based education centers. So we shifted towards a residential program to provide education opportunities for students. And then interestingly, as we gained traction on our own campuses, we had 9 of our own campuses, we started working with school systems. So taking what we had learned and then bringing that to local public school systems, whether that was teacher training, using new methodologies. School lunch programs are a great tool for attracting and retaining students, especially in low-income situations, because that's such an important part. That could be their best meal of the day often. And so we use some of those strategies to begin reaching and scaling more students. And the other important thing is having, and I'm not an educator, we have I've learned over the years, but I'm so in awe of our teachers and our teacher trainers, using the kind of methodologies that has the student drive their own learning. Obviously, they need to be in a context which makes that possible. But if you think about the really innovative methodologies, whether it's Montessori for young kids, or there's some great curricula out there for primary age students, Escuela Nueva, which came out of Colombia, New School. Again, and that's all about the students really kind of forging their learning. And then we use for the high school students and post-primary SAT, Sistema Aprendizaje Tutorial, tutorial learning system. So that's for kids in rural areas, young men and women in rural areas that don't have access to high school, learning through this tutorial system by doing. So, for example, they'll learn math by plotting out a garden. They'll learn life sciences, biology by composting. And all of that's very relevant because oftentimes these are students and their families that depend on agriculture. And so what we've tried to do with and for the students is give them something robust and relevant. And I think that's when it really clicks for them, because if it's just chalk and talk, if it's just somebody up there on the up at the blackboard just kind of regurgitating the lesson plans, that's really not relevant for them. I mean, it has to be applied learning. So we're proud that we've taken methodologies that are out there, contextualized them for the Nicaraguan cultural relevance and socioeconomic relevance, and it's really proven to work. So we're very proud of that, and I think it really makes a difference. And not only are the students, as you suggested or shared earlier, it's so working with parents to make sure that they appreciate the importance of education, working with teachers who might not have had the kind of training that we're used to having in the U.S., and making sure that they have the tools to make them become the most effective teachers. So it's working with both the students, the families, and the teachers, the whole education community.
That's incredible. And were everybody was more local staff, or did you depended on seasonal volunteers to come every year?
We built a great team in country, some incredible dedicated Nicaraguan teachers, teacher trainers, but we also did leverage volunteers, some that would come for shorter periods of time, churches, schools. They would come in, and it was about sharing and each community learning from each other. They'd work on a project together with colleagues in Nicaragua. That could be, fixing up a classroom, or putting in a school lunch hall, or working on some of the farming. And that's about both both communities learning from each other. And we did have long-term
Yeah.
volunteers, from both universities, business schools coming down to help us tackle an enterprise issue or something that we were looking to further. And we had, a staff, predominantly Nicaraguan, but others from different countries that came to work with us for short periods of time, a year or two, as well.
Can you give me examples of like these kids were getting meals, they were getting education, they were getting apprenticeship, right? What are some of the outcomes that you saw affecting these children? Were they were able to attend colleges? They were able to take over a family farm. What kind of stuff was happening, and how these communities were changing because of your work of the foundation?
Yeah, in contexts like Nicaragua and Central America, over half of the students don't make it to the sixth grade. So, you can imagine what future they're going to inherit. I mean, it's the continued subsistence farming or the kind of low level labor that really won't take them out of poverty. And so, our job number one was to break that ceiling for them, make sure that they can get through primary and then go post primary, whether that's technical training, which we did offer voced on whether it was automotive at the time or carpentry, more traditional trades, and then as things developed, making sure that they had access to some IT training. Many took English as a second language, giving them opportunity to plug in what was a burgeoning tourist trade in Nicaragua. And then our SAT program really gives them very practical agronomy skills. So improving yields, improving quality, so that family farm, which could be their best asset, really gets optimized, and linking them to markets and helping them with opportunities for credit and technical assistance. And so, most overwhelmingly, very, very few people in countries like Nicaragua, Honduras, or Guatemala work in the formal economy. So you have to give them the kind of tools, and there's a great entrepreneurial spirit down there, and pair that with some tools so that they can improve their livelihood. And, we were able to revert those dropout rates. We were able to get students moving through the system, graduate. We did have several hundred that went on to university, both in Nicaragua. We also were part of a couple of projects that help promising young students spend 2 years in the United States at junior colleges and community colleges. We're very proud of that. So those were opportunities that would have never been afforded to them had they not worked so very hard and were able to attain their high school degree.
I love this story so much, and to share, right, that I I left in '93 and I have never returned back to Nicaragua for many reasons, right? And when I spoke with you, in some ways, I had too much of an ambition of saying like I want to go forward. I didn't want to look into the past. And when I met you, it was a very special time for me in this country where I started realizing of the blessings that I had experienced, right, and the opportunities that I was able to take part of because of many people like you, right? I mean, I had, maybe it wasn't in Nicaragua, but I mean, I had school in Nicaragua, but I had, people in high school, people in college, people at work that mentored me, coached me, and guided me to be where I am today. I did not do this alone. And when you mentioned what you were doing, it definitely touched my heart of like wanting to go and see these kids, right? Because it's incredible. And then the pandemic hit, and it just everything went south, and now what happens. Tell us what happened, right? It's like you grown this amazing organization, and tell us a little bit about the social political situation in Nicaragua, and what happened to the foundation as it was headquartered in Nicaragua.
One of the wonderful things about Fabretto is it really transcended, Padre Fabretto transcended politics and got support from all peoples, rich, poor, left, right. And so we're very proud of that. And we worked closely with the Ministry of Education for many, many years. And it's just that the Nicaraguan government has closed many, many foundations. We were one of 1,300 nonprofit organizations and civil society organizations that have been closed. We were, had our charter revoked. Our assets were taken in Nicaragua. The small silver lining is the government does continue to use those schools, those physical assets to provide school. For now, we're taking our network, our knowledge of program delivery, and bringing it to other organizations in the region. So we're coming out of the ashes, and I'm just really proud of our team, and the response from friends and donors has been incredible. There's a lot of need all over the world, and those of us who are involved here in the United States or abroad know that service is seamless and it transcends borders. So we're excited about this chapter. We wish it had come about a different way, but we're not crying in our beer. We're moving forward. So it's an exciting time for our foundation.
I mean, I think that's what makes you, I think, a role model in my eyes, right? As an entrepreneur, as a leader, you pivoted very quickly, right? They seize your assets, they shut down all your operations, they took the authority, the control from you of something that you created, something Padre Fabretto created, and you mobilize, right? Despite all the harm they did to your family, and that, and you said, okay, I'm not going to stop right here. We're going to go and we're going to look where they need us. And you're now looking to expand through Central America, maybe starting in Guatemala. So tell us a little bit about this pivot and how this could be a blessing, in disguise, right?
Yeah, it was obviously a traumatic time, and our focus was making sure that the wind down could be done safely, so that none of our colleagues were in danger. It was a challenging time. And once that was done, and I physically left Nicaragua to come back to Chicago, it took a little while to reflect. And our team, we got together on Zooms, and we realized that what we built has value, and that the good news is you can't take education away from somebody. And so what we were able to do in Nicaragua still has lasting meaning, but pivoting from that to say, what are the tools that we've helped build? How can we deploy those in neighboring countries? How can we serve organizations that are working with youth and children, as we did, with very leading with methodologies that make a difference? And so we have over the years built relationships with other NGOs, and we reached out to them and we said, look, we are ready, willing, and able to help. We went deeper in monitoring and evaluation, or tech integration into the classroom, or linking some of the work in agriculture to markets. Those are things that we could bring to your organization. And they were very enthusiastic about that. Folks who have run the SAT program in Honduras, we've known for 20 years. And so there was trust, and we've worked with them on regional networks. So we were able to pivot very quickly, and the donor community, both individual givers and foundations, were very enthusiastic. Again, nobody said, sorry what happened, you're done. Everybody said, how can we help? Because we value what you've done, and we know it can make a difference in other places. And so, ironically, what happened in Nicaragua has kind of created this aperture for us to take it regionally. We've begun in Honduras. We just made our first grants to organizations in Honduras last week. We had our first virtual training for folks in Honduras, for about 400 teachers, to help use tech in classroom situations. There's going to be an in-person training middle October. I'm heading down there next week. So things are happening. We're very excited. We'll also be visiting 2 organizations in Guatemala that we're looking to support, both in funding and also in know-how. So, and that could expand to other countries, including Colombia and Ecuador in the near term.
I think that your attitude in your drive is definitely something to learn and follow, right? I think a lot of people are struggling with what to do with their lives, and I was talking to someone today going through some hardships and saying like, look, it's like this. I feel like a lot of people here in America, myself included, sometimes when we're down, we're like, well, how do we worry about our mental health, and how do we have a little bit of distraction, or we get busy, or we have fun, or we find a hobby, or we bike or kite surf or whatever. But I said the other option is you serve people, and you give, and really, that's something that you're showing me, right? And that's something I want to learn from, right? Because it's like, instead of thinking selfishly, we think of for others in what they need, and that gives us purpose and meaning, right? And so that's kind of why I wanted to be you here on the show, right? To tell the story of what it's like, to dedicate so much of your time, right, full time to this. And so tell me, like, for you personally, how is this satisfying? How does this has shaped your life, right?
Well, Elias, I'm a very lucky guy. I recognize that, and I think you're spot on. I think service is an opportunity for us to stretch ourselves, but also to really, the real heroes. People are, oh, Kevin, you do great stuff, and I'm happy that I've contributed. But when we work with the students in those families in the rural poverty or in the barrios, those are the real heroes. I mean, the sacrifice that they've had to make is so much greater than the granito de arena, the little bit that I've contributed. So that helps me step back and realize all the opportunities that I've been afforded. And again, to much who is given, much is expected. And that doesn't mean that it's all been served on a silver platter. I mean, you had to work your butt off to get to where you are, and really take advantage of those opportunities that mentors and others in your life. And I'm so proud that in turn you're doing that for other young entrepreneurs, especially in the Latino community, because there are less opportunities, there's less network, and you guys are building that infrastructure and really building that ecosystem. So when people say, or earlier in the show, you said, well, how do you get students to take advantage of those opportunities? Some gringo for Chicago can talk till he's blue in the face, but it's so much more relevant when they see somebody from their community whose family and they made those sacrifices, and then maybe got a scholarship to go to university, or maybe got an opportunity to join the SAT program and improve their livelihood. That speaks volumes. And so what you're doing here in the U.S. as a mentor and your network of mentors, that can really turn on that next gen to say, well, look, I mean, it can be done. Elias, not to say that everybody's going to build all these, but it's real. It's much more than, me getting up on a soapbox and saying, study hard, listen to your parents. So it's, services, I'm the lucky guy. So, and frankly, the other positive thing is, in a context that's so challenging, like Central America, or many contexts here in the United States, where progress can be hard, we were, very successful. We were able to build on an incredible legacy that Padre Fabretto built, that kept me going. So even though it wasn't, straight line, there's ups and downs, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In the last 30 years, we've created great change and great opportunities. So that kept me going as well.
That's the attitude that we need to have, and I think that's kind of what I'm at an inflection point, and trying to figure out. I'm helping kids in high school right now. I'm getting involved in that. I'm getting involved in college. I'm heading to USF. A lot of focus on Latino, right? And so we have stuff with children, housing, adults, college, and graduates, and so like it's fun, but I want to keep learning, right? I want to find that moment. I'm extremely lucky, but I want to make sure that every day I get up and I'm like so happy and excited for what I'm doing, right? And not because of what I have, but because of the people I'm with, right? And what I do. And that's what I want more people to realize, that it's not about just companies or money or fame or whatever. It doesn't matter. I love your I love your philosophy, right?
And obviously, the being able to meet your family, your wife, and know about kids, and likewise for me, my better half, Nellie, is a huge part of the success, and our son Nicholas, and we're just very blessed to be. And she's an entrepreneur. She and her brother started a company, and is really has that tenacity that you have to make things prosper. And so to have that work-life balance, it's hard because one's so focused on growing your enterprise, and you have to. I think I would have burned out a long time ago if I didn't have a wonderful home life as well. And I'm grateful to Manali and our son Nicholas for creating that. And I also work hard to contribute to that because I know it's important both for our family, but also to continue to do the great work that we're aspiring to do, both of us.
To wrap up your life, you are Americano, Italian immigrant, white guy shows up in Nicaragua, and then what happened? What happened on the personal side?
Well, it's funny. I was some friend who I'd met in Washington, a Nicaraguan guy who was working at the embassy at the time. I had knocked on the Nicaraguan embassy to seek support for our organization, and he and I hit it off. And then he was posted back to Managua to work, and we stayed in touch. And he and my wife were friends and distant cousins. And so, back before there was text and cell phones and all that, they were going to some party, and Georgetown had a volunteer house, and that's where I was living. And they came by the house, and I was sitting in a rocking chair and in flip flops and shorts, and they said, "Hey, you want to go to this party?" And I said, "Sure." So I put a collared shirt on and some khakis, and Manelli and I spent the whole night talking and really enjoyed each other's company. And it was at a time. It was kind of funny because I felt that one chapter in Nicaragua, at least Fabretto, was moving forward. My dad said you should think about business school if you're going to really run an organization, whether it's a nonprofit or an enterprise, especially given that my background was in liberal arts. So at that time, right then, I was heading back to Chicago. I did my MBA at Kellogg at Northwestern University, which was a great experience for me because it's one of the faculties that realized that management is management, whether it's a social enterprise, a foundation, or a for-profit. So Manali and I had begun to see each other, and then we stayed in touch. I would visit Nicaragua during my summers, and she came up to see me once in Chicago. But upon return in '96, it really took off, and married in '98. So next year will be 25 years, and our son Nicholas is 21 in November. So it's incredible. It's it's been quite a ride. I'm a lucky guy.
I strongly believe in role modeling, and just sometimes just one meeting, just one word, one conversation, or even knowing about an individual can change the entire direction of your life. That happened to you with Padre Fabretto. You were privileged to meet him. Unbelievable. Like you said, definitely we'll continue to support you, and I think that's really what I want people to know on the podcast, right? That it's not just about how do we succeed in life and careers or companies or entrepreneurship, but it's like, how do we become the individuals that we need to become, right? What is our purpose? And one of them is helping, right? And one of them is finding people like you. If we're not, it has to be a system, right? We either work and give, or we go and do the work that the kids need, or do both, right? There is no excuse. And people need to know that you don't have to wait your entire life to say, now I can help. We can begin helping now, even if it's little. And even if it's coming, visiting you, getting involved, go to Guatemala, go help with one of those organizations, because it could change your life, and it could be a much better life, like your life, a life of service, a life of family, and a life of gratitude and happiness for what you do. And thank you for being on the show.
I appreciate it, Elias. It's been a privilege, especially working with friends like you, and excited for this next chapter, and certainly would love to invite everybody who's listening and watching. Fabretto, retto.org. Fabretto.org is our website, and there's information about how to get involved. And I'm just Kevin at Fabretto.org. So always happy to hear from folks who have experience and want to share what they've done and learn from them, and also whatever we've been able to do. Happy to share that. And people, we do it together. So whether you can volunteer, whether you can support financially, whether you have ideas or connections, networks that you think we should meet, encantado and delighted and appreciative. So thank you so much.
Yeah, people should take the invitation. It is the easiest thing you can do. Go help, and you don't need to know anything. Just call Kevin, and you'll get them going one way or another. Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for listening to the American Dream Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss when a new episode drops. If you like this episode, please leave a 6-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're interested in learning more about my American Dream mission, subscribe to my newsletter linked in the show notes.